Hey, thanks for stopping by the channel. In this video, we're going to be covering the basics of HTML and CSS, and then how to continue practicing and hone your skills within HTML and CSS. Now, this actual video is a small portion of a much larger video that I'm working on. I decided to go ahead and publish this because HTML and CSS is something that you really kind of need to practice on your own and get the feel for, looking at websites that you think are really cool and then try to design them yourselves. So I'm going to walk you through how to practice with HTML and CSS and the most common parts of HTML and CSS. So in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be releasing probably close to a 10, 11, 12-hour course. I think I have about 8 hours of content right now, and I decided to post this portion on HTML and CSS before I publish the entire course, so you can go ahead and start practicing with the basics of web development before we start looking at the security side of web development. And in this video, I do cover some of the basics of security in HTML and CSS. And so one of the things we are going to be building is actually this website right here. This is going to be kind of like our capstone final project, if that's what you'd like to call it. And this is pretty simple, but this is going to cover the basics of what we need in HTML and CSS to get you started. And it's pretty simple looking. You're going to get to see a bunch of different areas of CSS, just so you can see just how vast it can actually be and what you can do as a web designer. So let's go ahead and jump into this. The first thing we're going to do is download Visual Studio Code. That's what I'm going to be using in this video. So you can go ahead and go to code.visualstudio.com/download. I will have this link in the description, and you're obviously going to download and install this for whatever you're running on, if it's Windows, Linux, or Mac. And once that is finished downloading, what you'll want to do is open it up, and we'll click on these little boxes down here. Now I have quite a few extensions already installed, but what I want you to install is actually called Prettier. So you can just type that in right here, click on it, and then you will install it. So before we actually start writing any code, I want to talk a little bit about what HTML is. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript make up the front end of web development. So let's go ahead and look at what this is. Okay, so here we are. We have somebody just using their home computer. We have videos and emails and documents and stuff like that. This is all going to be on the client side or the user side. So this is something that we're all familiar with, and making this look pretty like we see right here in this picture is going to be done with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, the way this actually works is we're not going to be dealing a lot with the server, but what happens is the side that we use as the client that we see in our web browser, we're able to send a request to the server saying, I want to get your website.com, and then the server will send that back to us with the response, and then we're able to see it. And when the server sends this, what it will send back to us is the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript. And so what are these? Well, the HTML is the hypertext markup language, which is going to give us the basic building blocks of the website. The CSS, cascading style sheets, this is going to give us the style, which is going to make it look pretty, and the JavaScript gives it the functionality. So what this looks like as an example is going to be the HTML would be the frame of a car. It gives you the basic building blocks or the structure of what we are going to be building. And then the CSS is what's going to make it look really cool. It is going to give it that style or the flair, as you might like to think of it. And then the JavaScript is going to be the motor, or what's going to give it the functionality. So if you have a gas pedal and you want it to work, you're going to need a motor. So if you push on the gas pedal, then you want it to do something. You can think of it, if I click on the button, then I want it to do something. If I push on the gas pedal, then I want it to do something. That is going to be your JavaScript. So let's go ahead and come back over here to our VS Code editor, and we're going to click on these little pages right here, but we would like to open up a new page. So as we're going to open up a new page, what I want to do is come over here and create a new folder, and we will rename this, and we'll just call it YouTube, and we can just open up this folder by going File. So we'll want to open up this folder by clicking on our VS Code editor. We're going to click on File, and then we're going to want to open the folder. And once you have opened your folder, it should look like this. You'll see the folder name right here and this welcome page. But what we want to do is actually create a new file, and we're just going to call this index.html. And this is where we're going to start our basic program. So if we open up our folder now, you're going to see we have this index.html. You can actually double click that and it's going to open for you a page here and put that in the browser. And so what we can do just to start out to make sure that this is actually working is we can start out with a basic header tag by just typing in h1 and closing this off. And then we're going to just type in hello and we can hit save so that way that little ball right here goes away. So we'll go ahead and save that. And if we come back over to this page and we refresh it, we see we have hello right here. So now we know this is working here for us and we're going to want to delete this. And there is something called boilerplate in the world of HTML where you're going to have certain things like a doc type, a header, a body, and maybe a footer, a nav bar, things like that. If you want to have the boilerplate, which I usually like to have, you can just put in an exclamation point and you're going to have this first one pop up right here and it's going to show you the boilerplate right here. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter because I want to be using this because I want you to get used to seeing boilerplate and being familiar with where the head is and where your links go and maybe the title of your page. So if we save this right here and we refresh this, you're going to see our title up here has now changed to a document. And you can actually change this to my site and save it, and we can come back over here and refresh and you can see that has changed. So this is going to be the boilerplate, and right here inside of the body is where we're going to be building out our HTML website. So a few things I also want to let you know is the HTML tags are not case sensitive. So if we come in here and we type something in and we save this and we come over here and refresh it, it's still going to work for us. So this is not case sensitive, though you're always pretty much, I don't think I've ever seen this in with caps. So you're going to see it in a lowercase, but just know that it's not case sensitive. And you're also going to notice that we have these backslashes right here. These are the closing tags and these are the opening tags. So if we create a heading 1, so we type in this H1 right here, we are going to see that we have this automatically closed because I think I have another install right here. You can install this if it's not automatically closing, auto close tag. It's got almost 11 million installs. So back here we have the closing tag and the opening tag. So what we'll do in this case is our actual text goes right here. It goes in between the opening tag and the closing tag. This becomes important whenever we start dealing with divs. So we have these divs right here because these are going to be kind of like little tiny boxes that will go around different sections of our code. So you'll need to be familiar with the closing tags and the opening tags. So the opening does not have the slash, the closing does in fact have the slash. If we come over here and we refresh, we have the text is really big because we are using the H1. So what we could do with the H1 is you're going to notice instead of having like a font size in the world of HTML, you have the heading sizes. So you have a 2, you have the 3, you have the 4, the 5, and the 6 right here. And if we save this and we come back over to our page and we refresh it, you're going to see the text size actually changes here for us. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this is kind of your text size. These are all headings, but usually when you do any kind of typing, you're going to use what is the paragraph tag and you will put your text in here. So this is a paragraph tag, and we can save this and come back over to our page. If we refresh it, you'll see this is the size of the paragraph tag. And these are going to be the most common tags that you see that include text, and you will need to be aware of them. Okay, we're going to go ahead and delete this H6 through this H2, and we'll just kind of pretend like we are building out a portfolio at this point. So we can just type in our name right here. So we'll just type in Ryan John. Instead of having this say this is a paragraph, we will put in here something like I am learning to code exclamation point, and we'll go ahead and just make all of this in caps. So we'll just do something like I'm learning to code. So if we save this and we come back over here and we refresh, it says our name and I am learning to code. But let's say we actually want this in italicized and we want this on a new line. there is a couple of HTML tags or elements that we can use for this. So we can come in here and we can just say we want to emphasize this right here. So we can copy, or actually we'll just cut this and we'll paste it right here. So if we save that and we come back over and refresh it, you can see that this is now italicized. And we want our code on a new line, so we can just type in this BR right here, and this will put that on a new line. So if we save this and hit return, it says our name and I am learning to code. Now let's say we like the way this looks, but we want to have a page break right here underneath our name. You can actually come to this element right here, right in between, and we want to put in HR, and this is going to put that line. So if we save this and we refresh, you're going to see that we now have this line. And it's hard to see, but I think this line has a 1 pixel height, and we can actually change that by coming over here to our HR, and inside of our closing caret, we can just type in size equals, and let's say we want to make it 10, and we come back over and we refresh this. You can see now that it has become thicker. And let's say we decide we don't like this, we can comment this out by hitting Command question mark on a Mac or Control question mark on a Windows. And now if we save this and we come back over here and refresh it, it's going to be gone, but it's still here in the code. One thing I really like to do is comment stuff out, because sometimes I might want to come back later and see maybe I really did like this, and I can put it back in by just hitting Control question mark and it is automatically back in. Or sometimes maybe I'm working on a project with somebody else. I can make notes over here and say, I am not sure I like how this looks. And then I can highlight this and I can comment it out. And it accidentally commented the entire thing, but that's okay. We can just move this over here and comment out the section that we want commented out. So we can think maybe later I'm going to come back and change this. And now we can save this. And if we come back over here and refresh, we have our line. I do not like that as a 10, so we'll just make that 1. Come back over here, and now we have our real thin line, and we have our comment, so we know maybe later we might want to come back and change this. So this is the very basics of designing with text on, and now we're going to start looking at some more tags, and maybe even look at our first tags that we can start to use for exploits if we want to move into the world of penetration testing or ethical hacking. Or if maybe you want to be a software developer, you're going to need to know how to make secure code. So let's come back over to our text editor and check these out. Okay, so we're going to be looking at some image tags and some iframes. So the first thing we're going to want to do is find an image that we would like to use in our video right here. I'm just going to use my little logo of my hacker guy. So we have this logo.png right here. And an image, if we want to embed an image, it's pretty simple. We can just put in the image tag and then the source of the image. So I'll just show you what this looks like. We just type in image, and the source is going to be the name of the image. So we'll just type in logo.png. And this all right here is if our image is broken, what do we want this to show? And we would just put in here something like, we'll just put an image like this. So now if we come over to our page and refresh it, you're going to see we have our image. So what we can do with our image is change the size, but before we do, I want to show you this little alt right here and show you why I typed in image right here. So if we refresh this, it's just going to say that this is a broken image. So this is the text image, and it's supposed to be an image right here. And I'll show you real quick how to change the size. It's pretty simple. You just type in the height, and let's say we wanted to do 300, and the width, and we'll do 100, and we can save this and come over here and refresh, and our guy is really skinny. I don't think I like the way that looks. Let's do a 300 by 300 and come back over here and refresh it. He's still pretty skinny, so maybe we'll change our height a little bit, and this will probably make him too squatty. Oh, that's all right. So that is how we would add in an image. So let's say we want that up by our name. So I can go ahead and cut that and put it up here, save, and put it up here by our name. It's above our little HR tag right there. Because we don't want to add any CSS, I think I'm going to just leave the guy right here, and I'll show you how to add in an iframe. So this is how to add in an image, and we're going to be doing more with images here in just a minute. This is the basics of adding in an image right here. So let's go ahead and add in an iframe now. So an iframe is going to be putting in a specific website that you want displayed in your own website. The iframe and the image are often going to be used in some kind of cyber attacks or some kind of injection. So you're going to see them a lot and you're going to get familiar with them in creating payloads if you want to go down the penetration tester route. But I'll show you why the iframe can kind of be dangerous. Is you can add in an iframe and we could just say https and let's say www.bing.com, and we want to change the height a little bit. So I'm actually just going to delete this. We don't need the border. And so we'll change the width to 800 pixels, and we can make a height of 800 pixels as well. So if we save this and we come over to our page and refresh, you're going to see that we actually have like bing.com right here, and you can search for stuff and it's actually going to work. So you can kind of see how this can be dangerous if you're able to embed bing.com and somebody thinks they're on Bing, but you have a nav bar up here and you say log in to whatever, you make a fake login for bing.com and they clicked on this and actually used their login information, you would be able to steal that from them. So iframes can be dangerous, but you can see how they work right here. But they can also be useful if you are adding in some kind of advertisement on your website and you're trying to monetize it. The last thing I want to show you is the anchor tag. So if we just go ahead and delete this, we can add in an anchor tag just like this. And so let's say we have a page 2 and we want to go to this specific page 2. What we can do is create a new file and we can just say page2.html, and we can say this is our login page, and we can save this and save this. If we come back over here, we're going to need to say go to page 2. Save that. If we come back over to our page and refresh it, we're going to have this little button right here. And if you click it, it's going to tell us that it is broken because we need to add in .html right here. Now, if we refresh this page and we click on this, it's going to take us to what it says is our login page. So an anchor tag is going to take you to a new page. And what you can actually do with an anchor tag is it doesn't have to be within your website. We could just say https://www.aicollegenotes.com, and we can save this and we can say create notes with AI, save, and we can refresh our page over here. If we click this, we're going to actually be taken to a completely different website. So you can see how anchor tags are useful. You can create an anchor tag with a separate page in your own document, or you can create an anchor tag and send you somewhere else. You can create an iframe and embed something like aicollegenotes.com on your own website, and then you can use this website within your own. And then you can also create an image source like this. But there is one last thing I want to show you. We can actually delete this. Actually, what we'll do is we'll just comment this out, because we're going to use some of this information, and we can create an anchor tag, and we can move our closing tag below our image, and we can actually make this image an anchor tag itself. So if you click on the image, it's going to take you to this website right here. So we can copy this and put it in as our href. And now if we save this, we should be able to come over here, refresh, and you can see our image is now clickable. You can see it goes from a mouse to the little pointer clicker, and if we click on it, it's going to take us to aicollegenotes.com. So that is the basics of the image and the anchor tags. I would go ahead and encourage you to upload an image or two and try and get them to become clickable, and create an extra page like this page 2 or a login. Maybe build a little bit of it with your HTML. So just create this page 2 over here and maybe just make this an H1 and say this is our login page, and then you can create a paragraph and you can say what this is going to have you log into. Like, just play around a little bit and make sure you have a grasp on what we have covered so far, because we're getting ready to make inputs and create a button. So with that, we'll just continue going. I think where we'll make our buttons and our input is going to be over here on this page 2. So that way we just have it somewhere new. So if you remember how to do this, shift, exclamation point, and enter gets us our boilerplate just like this. And we'll just make an H1 and we'll call this our input right here. And so the way we are going to go about this is pretty simple. We're just going to type in input right here, and it's going to ask us what type we want this to be. I'll show you what the type text is in just a minute. We're just going to leave it as text for now. And we can come over here and just say we want to make a placeholder, and we'll call it username. And I'll just go ahead and actually copy this, and I'll show you what this type text is, because we can change this to password, and we would change this to password. And now if we save this and we refresh our page, come over to our other page, which actually I did not make a way for us to get there, so we'll just type it in the URL, page 2.html. So here it is. So we have our username, which we can type in username, and our password is password. So the type password that I showed you right here is going to make these little bubbles. And if you actually right click on this and go to inspect, you can come down here to where you see our HTML and we have this type password. You can just change this to text right here, and you can see now that it's going to be rendered as text, but if we refresh it, it's going to go back to a password. So we can come over here and you can type this as text, and if we refresh this, you're going to see it now as text, and it's going to show up as text instead of those little bubbles. So that is just what those do. We're not actually going to do anything with that. So then the next thing we want to do is create a button. So you can have a button and you can just say click me, and we can refresh this page, and now we have this button, but it actually does nothing. So this is how you'd create an input field and a button, but I kind of want to show you how these can be used negatively or dangerously by malicious actors. So before I do that, we're going to actually have to add a little bit in here, and I know this is outside the scope of HTML, but we need a little bit of JavaScript added in here. So with our button, you really need it to do something. So we can just say on click, we want it to do something. So we're going to say we want it to reflect text, and we'll call it as HTML. And this is going to be a function. So this is right here. So when we click our button, it's going to call a function, which we are going to write down here. So we can just say script, and we can create our function right here by just saying function reflect as HTML, call our function, open up our curly braces, and this is not going to look familiar to you, but I really do want you to see this. So you can type this out if you want to follow along. Var is just our variable, and we're going to be using the input text, which we need to name. So we'll name this input text, and we need to give this an ID, and we're going to call it text input right here, input text, so that way we can identify it down here as our variable. And we're going to say equals document dot get element by ID, which is going to grab our element from up above. And we're going to grab the text input value, and we want to do document dot get element by ID again, and we want to have an output inside of our inner HTML, so that way it'll reflect on the screen. So we're going to say inner HTML equals input text. So all this is going to do is grab the text that we put inside of our little button right here, and it's going to reflect it down below as long as we typed everything properly, which I think we did. So we can go ahead and refresh this and try it, and we click our button and nothing happens. And the reason that nothing is happening is because we need to actually render our output. So we can just type in div right here, and we can give it an ID of our output. So we can say output. And the reason this isn't working is because I named these different. So this needs to be the text input right here. So we can type in text input, and this should work for us, and there it is. So now we have it reflecting on our screen. So I want to show you how you can use an image tag as well as the iframe or other tags in order to cause something malicious to happen on a web page. Now this isn't being stored on a server because we don't have a server, but it should reflect here in our basic web page that we have just created. So with our little button, if we just type in like a basic cross-site scripting payload and we just type in alert one and we close off our script tag, nothing is happening when we hit this little button. So we can actually use an image tag as we saw earlier. So if we type in image, actually we'll type this over here so that way you can see it a little better. So over here, if we just type in our image tag and we give it a source of this will not work. And if it has an error in loading this, then we want it to do something. And we can just say on error equals alert, and we can put in the one. So the reason this is going to work as cross-site scripting is because it's going to try to load this, but there's nothing here for it to load. And then on the error, it's going to alert one. So if we copy this and we paste it into our little input and we hit click me, we're going to have this cross-site scripting show up, which can be used for malicious purposes, which we're going to cover in the near future as we cover JavaScript. But for now, we're just covering HTML and a little bit of CSS, but this could be used for malicious purposes. So that is how you can use an image tag for something bad, but you can also use an iframe as well. But the iframe is usually used more in a phishing technique rather than just pulling off a cross-site scripting or something along that nature. But you can do something similar with an iframe. So if we come back over here, we can type out an iframe. And if we have this source right here, we can just say that we actually don't need a source at all. We don't need any of this. We can just delete all of that and we can just say on load. So once it loads, we want it to do something and we can say equals and we can type in JavaScript and we want it to alert one, just like we had it do before. And I believe this looks right. So we could copy this and come over here and paste it in and hit click me and our iframe tries to load, but it doesn't load and it loads instead for us the JavaScript with the alert. And I believe and there is our little iframe. I believe we actually need the JavaScript to be in there. I don't think it works with just the alert. Maybe it does. Some older versions of HTML will work without the JavaScript, and it does work without the JavaScript. And I misspoke. I think the older versions of HTML actually require the JavaScript to be in here to tell it to run the alert, but I could be mistaken. But I think that's why you sometimes see this payload with this JavaScript right here. But you don't actually need it. And here it creates our little iframe for us. So we click it and we get our cross-site scripting back here. So since we just covered iframes and image tags, I wanted to show you that they can be used for malicious purposes as well. And you're going to see that if you continue on this journey to be a developer or a cybersecurity professional. So with that, let's continue on. Okay, so I think now what we will do is cover the unordered list, the ordered list, and the description tags. So we'll just come down underneath of our script tag on our page 2 over here. And I think what we'll just start out with is like an H4 or an H3, doesn't really matter. And we'll just say our list. And what we can do is we'll just start with an unordered list. So we'll just say UL, and inside of here, we're going to make our list. And so we're going to say, I like computers, and we'll say, I like code, and I did not realize that we need this inside of our list. I like coding, and we'll make one more, and we'll just say, I like HTML. Just like this. So if we save this, what this will look like is a little list over here. So we have our list, and this is going to be in bullets, but we can actually change this to something else by putting it inside of an OL tag. So if we actually just come right here and we say OL, we grab this closing tag, and this is going to be an ordered list, so we can save that and come over here. And now we have 1, 2, 3. So this is our ordered list, is going to give us our 1, 2, and 3. And the unordered list is going to give us the bullet points. So if we come over here and we can see that it is now in bullet points. So an example of using an ordered list is going to be inside of something like items I need before I leave. I would need socks. I would need some shoes, and maybe I need a hat. And if we save this and we refresh, you can see we have the unordered list and the ordered list, and maybe we want these to be separated by a bar. So we have our line separator right here, and we want a separator from up here. And I actually just realized that I have this outside of the body tag, which is not where you would typically want this. You'd want this inside the body tag. Save, and we can put in another line, and we can come over and refresh, and we now have things separated right here like this. And so I actually want to look at the div now, because we have these little lines separating things, but really inside of HTML you're going to see the div tag really quite often, and I'll show you why I think of the div tags as blocks, and I will show you why I typically think of them that way. Because let's see, we have this div tag, we have a closing tag here, we need an opening tag here, so we should now have div tags. So I'll show you real quick how this works. So if we just come in here and we type in style, and I know we're not covering CSS, but we'll just make this aqua. This div right here, from this opener to this close, I see now we have a closing right here. So what we'll do is we'll just delete this because we don't need that to reflect anything. So now this closing tag will close to this, and this opening tag will close with this one right here. So if we make this div, we'll give it a color as well. And let's say we want to make the color blue. We can save this now. And if we come over here and refresh, you're going to see that the style now has changed our colors. So another way to do this is, let's actually grab this div tag right here and move it, because we have those lines, and it'll make it a little more easy to understand. So if we come back over here, now you have everything in this div is going to be aqua, and everything in this one's blue, and this one's black, because they're inside of different dividers. Another way to see this, to make this a little more clear, is to actually just go and change the background color. And we'll change the background color right here, and we'll highlight this and say we want the background color to be blue. So now if we refresh this, you can see that it makes this whole div a different color. So the divs come in handy whenever we're designing complete landing pages and we are trying to divide up the content. And I'll actually just open up a simple page that we're going to make in the coming future, in the next course on CSS, and show you what I mean by dividing up the page. All right, so here it is. So we have this, we're gonna make this in the future, but this image right here would be in one div. This right here would be in a second div, and this would be inside of a third div. So that is how divs are used in separating content. Typically something like this, so that you can actually break up the content. Sometimes you'll see divs with inside of divs, and that would be this right here. So this right here, my goals, is inside of a div, inside of a bigger div, and it's separate than these two divs. But we'll get there in the future. I just want you to understand that they block off chunks of code. So that is kind of what a div does and how they work. Now, divs are different than what we would think of as like a span. So let's say down here, we want to separate this again. We want to add a paragraph tag, and we want to type something in here. We can actually make a span, and inside of the span, you can type some text. So I'm going to grab some dummy text and paste it in over here. And if we save this and we come over to our page, we refresh, we see we have our dummy text inside of our paragraph, inside of our span. And I'm actually just going to make this bigger so that way we can see it a little better. I'll just close this off. There we go. And what we can do with a span is we can actually just like color part of the text. So we could just say that we want to style again, and we could just say color, and we'll just make it red. And if we save that and come back over to our page and refresh, you can see our text is a different color. I don't use spans really ever. But it is something that you might see in the future, so it is something that you should be aware of. All right, for our capstone project, I think what we will do is make a little Wikipedia page like this. We'll put our little logo up here with a clicker, with an href, so the way you can click on it and it will take you to like a different page or something. And we'll make a programmer page, and then we're going to organize it like this. We're probably going to ignore putting some of these images on the side because we're going to need to do some styling, and we haven't covered that just yet. So we're going to make a page similar to this with these bold words right here. We'll have some links that we can click in here, and we're going to try to do this. So yeah, let's go ahead and open up a new page. And actually what I think I'll do is just make a wiki.html, and we will start over right here. So if you want, you can go ahead and try to do this yourself, or you can follow along. So we'll just start out by typing in programmer at the top as our title, and we're going to be at wiki HTML, so we can change this to wiki.html, and we are brought to this page, and we can see our title is changed up here. So we now have that title set up. So the first thing I think we will do is we'll just put our little image inside of the head tag, and we'll put it all the way up at the top left so we can create our little tag. So we'll make our image tag, and we're going to make it our logo.png, and we're going to save this and make sure that it shows up. We can refresh, and there it is. We want to move it to the left a little bit and make it a lot smaller, so we can delete our alt because I'm not worried about it, and we can say width 250. Actually, we'll make it 150, and we'll do the height. And what you're going to notice when we do things like this and we're actually setting up our images and our text is you're going to see a lot of save, come over to the page and refresh, and we just want to look at it to make sure that it looks nice. Like that right there didn't look nice, and I totally just went the wrong direction with that. So let's go 200 and 200, save, and our little guy looks a little better. We'll make him a little bit shorter. Let's go 100, refresh. That is good enough for me. So we have our little guy right here. We want to make him an anchor tag, so we can copy this because inside of our Wikipedia page, this is an anchor tag, and we'll make it take us to our original page, so we can just say our index.html. And if we come over here now and we refresh this, and I see that this isn't working because we have a closing tag there. So if we come back over here now and we refresh it, we have our little button, and you can click on it and it takes us to our index.html. So we have our little logo. Now what we want to do is get our text to be over here towards the center, and the dimensions that I'm going to use you might have to change because I'm on a widescreen computer and yours might be a little skinnier. So what we're going to do is start out with an H1, and we can open those up or we can leave them closed. We'll leave them closed for now, and we're just going to say programmer because that is what we have right here. So we have this programmer, and if we refresh, we have it over here. And let's grab some dummy text from this. I guess it won't actually be dummy text. So we'll just grab this. I don't actually want to copy any of the links. And we have an HR for our line break right here. So if we refresh this, we'll see our line break. And now we have what looks like some paragraph text. And I think I might actually just paste that in there twice. So that way I have a little bit more in here. And so what we want to do is bring all of this over so that it's kind of like centered. And this is actually pretty simple to do without knowing a whole lot of CSS. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a really large div, and we'll bring it down here, and everything we're going to create is going to be inside this div. So that way it's all centered, and we're going to give it a style, and we're just going to say we want the width to be 800 pixels, and you might have to play around with that a little bit in order to get that to fit your screen perfectly. Now what we want to do is scoot this over. So we can scroll back over here, and we want this to be centered, and we want no margin. So we're going to say margin auto for the left and the right. And then lastly, we are going to want to leave it like that. I was going to say align the text, but we don't actually want our text centered. So if we refresh this, it is now over here in the center. So that looks pretty good. We could actually put an input up here. This is actually a nav bar, and we haven't covered that yet, but we could actually put an input up here with a search button. If we wanted to, we could put it inside this head tag, which is where your nav bar would go. So we could actually say we want an input and it can be text, and we want a button and it's going to be search. And if we refresh that, we have just, that actually looks kind of ugly. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that because we're not going to spend time styling this. So if we refresh it, we'll just go ahead and get rid of this little search bar itself. And so the next thing we need to do is we need to make some of this bold. And we haven't covered this, but if you wanted to tackle this on your own, you could just Google how to make something bold with HTML, and it's going to tell you that you use what is called the emphasis. So we would just type in EM, and we can move this closing tag to after the word programmer. And if we come over here now and we refresh this, I actually made it italicized because that is the wrong one. I think it's actually called bold. No, it's called strong. So we can add in strong. This is how you'd make it bold. So we'll copy that, paste it over, save it, refresh it, and now a programmer is bold right here. So you can now see that this has been made bold. I think we could actually add in emphasis. This might actually not work, but we can try with trial and error, see if we can get this to work just with HTML tags. So if we refresh this, it does make it italicized. So we have the italicized and the bold right here on our word programmer. So we have a little bit of bold. We have the article and the talk. I think we'll leave these how they are, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually add in an anchor tag on computer programs. So let's see. Let's add one in on programming language. We're going to add in an anchor tag and have this take us to a different page. So what we can do is just hit A, hit enter. It's going to create for us our anchor tag. We'll move the closing to right here. And where do we want the programming language to take us? Let's say we want it to take us to this specific Wikipedia page. We can just put that Wikipedia page in here. And now if we save this, and you see we have the anchor tag with the href, the location we want it to take us. So this should now be a clickable link for us. So if we come back over to our page and we refresh it, we now have this right here as a clickable link. And if we click on it, it takes us to this link. So there's a link inside of our programming little blip that we have right here. So let's see, what we could do now is actually add a new section. So we'll just add the terminology. So we can add that again as an H1. And now here might be when we might want to start adding divs, because if we just go H1, paste in terminology, come over to our page, refresh it, maybe we want to do some kind of styling in the future. You might want to create this in a second div so that you can change stuff within this specific section instead of having them come together. So we'll leave it for now, but that's just something to be aware of in the future. That was supposed to be our line break, so our horizontal line, refresh, and there is our new line. Let's grab some of this terminology page. I think this might actually copy that link for us. I hope not, and it did not. So we are able to actually just grab, it looks like, all of this and paste it in right here. We can save it, come back, and what's funny about this is I actually forgot to add this paragraph tag. So instead of scrolling all the way to the end here, I'm just going to put it right there. Hit the delete button. Now it's on the bottom. Should be able to save this, come back to our page, refresh it, and we have our little, I think these are subscripts. We're not going to be dealing with those. And to be honest, I don't think I've ever put one of those in anything I've ever developed before in my life. And apparently I just added in another paragraph tag and I am on the struggle bus. There we go. So now if we refresh with this page, we can get rid of those. So let's say we want to make programmer again. Let's say we want to make it bold and we want it to be a clickable link. You can go ahead and try and do that. If you want, you can pause the video. If not, let's see if we can find the word programmer. We'll just do it at this front one right here up top. So programmer. we can just make this an anchor tag like this. Cut that, move this over here, and let's say we're going to make this one take us to https://www.aicollegenotes.com. And we want to make this bold, so what we have to do is add in the strong tags. We can cut that, put that over here and save it. You're going to see that this is made bold, and if we click on it, it's going to take us to aicollegenotes.com. So let's see, our Wikipedia page is coming together just a little bit. I don't think we need to just keep adding a bunch of these different types of splits or divisions. So what I think we can do now is let's just add in this type of software, because that is something new that we haven't done. So let's say we want to add that in right underneath of our paragraph tag. It looks like there is a double space. So let's see if this will actually just space it for us. And it looks like it's a heading. So let's just say it's a heading 4, paste in type of software, refresh, and it is all the way to the left, which means it is outside of our div. Did I accidentally move our div all the way back here? I did indeed. So we'll just move that, cut this, paste, save, and refresh. Let's see, H4 was a little small. Let's make it an H3, and we can refresh. That looks a little better. And now let's go ahead and add in some types of software. We can just copy this right here and paste it in as a paragraph, save, refresh, and we now have this types of software. So let's go ahead and actually add in this globalization and a little box that says we're going to give you more information if you click this link. So we can make this box, and we'll change the background to gray. It's just so you can see how these divs are added in to this Wikipedia page. So we'll go ahead and grab this globalization, and we'll come back, move our div down. We'll make this another H1, add in the globalization, add in our line break. And do they have any information? They do not. Let's actually grab both of these and put them in over here. And then we'll put this in between them to make it look a little bit different. So we'll grab market changes in the UK, which actually has nothing to do with, I think, programming. But did we make that a H3? So we have this. We'll add in our paragraph. We'll copy this, and we'll save it, and we'll come look over here. Let's go ahead, and at this point, we will add in our little globalization box. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to end up adding another div, and this div up here we have is the width of 800. So this is actually going to be inside of this div. So I believe that what we can do is copy this, paste it in here, and we need to have this say style, and this should be width, and apparently nothing is going to work from my copy paste, so we'll just retype the entire thing, and I believe we can make this a 700, save it, and we need to put something inside of it. We actually also need to change the background color was different. So the background color was gray, but for the sake of actually getting our div to look right, I'm going to make it something completely different. So if we refresh our page, our div is not showing up, and that is because we don't have anything in here. So if we refresh it, we now have this div, and it is off to the side. So we will need to come back to our style, and we want to, I believe what we want to do is, let's change our height really quick so our box is a little bigger. So we'll make this like 300 pixels, which will make our box, I'll show you what it's going to do. Instead of our box being really skinny, it's going to be much larger. So now we have our box right here. What we need to do is move it over to the left just a bit. And the way to get this to scoot over just a little bit, that box is just a little big now and it's bothering me. We'll change that to 200, is we're going to have to make the position and we need it to be absolute. And I think we should be able to just do some padding to the left. And these numbers are going to change for you based on your screen size. This isn't how you would make something responsive, but we're not ready for that. That's all more advanced CSS. So if we come over here and we refresh that, we did not save this, and we refresh. And the reason that didn't work is because we have padding left. We don't want the padding, we just want it moved. And we should be able to come over here, and now this has moved our box over. Let's go ahead and change our height back to 200, refresh, and we have this little box right here. And so that is the basics of how we would go about making the Wikipedia page. So as you can see, the Wikipedia page is mostly just going to be HTML. There's not a whole lot of fancy styling or CSS. So it looks pretty good for our beginner guide to understanding HTML. And HTML is pretty simple. Just play around. Maybe just try to make another Wikipedia page and delete all of this code over here and see if you can remember how to make these little tags, make things bold or italicized, and add in a little div here and there to try and space things out. So that is our beginner's guide to HTML. And now we're going to move on to CSS. Before we start the section on CSS, I think that's really important for you to know that CSS is going to seem really overwhelming because everything we're about to see is new, and everything you do is going to have to manually be typed in, and there's a lot of moving parts to CSS. So if you look at this page right here, this little guy right here, to get him in the center is going to be at least 5 different areas of CSS that you need to know how to move him over. You need to know how to make a section and put him in the center. You need to know how to change the size. So there's just a lot of stuff. And so as we go through this, it's going to seem really overwhelming. So how I learned this is looking at websites that I thought were really cool, where I just wanted to know how to design something, kind of like we did with the Wikipedia page. And I would Google how to do something like make these 3 columns right here. How do I get these 3 columns in the center of a section with a background image? And I would Google that, and then I would go try to practice it. So I'm going to show you the basics of CSS, and then we're going to go ahead and build this actual site right here. It's pretty simple. It's a static website, no backend, and of course we're not going to use any JavaScript because we haven't covered that yet. So let's go ahead and start our designing with CSS. So the best way I have found, or the way I learned to use CSS when styling pages, is I would go out to a page that I really like the way that it looked. And we're actually going to make this not because it's really cool, but because it's going to give you an idea of a lot of the different elements, and you are going to feel overwhelmed as we make it, but you'll be able to see just how much you can do with HTML and CSS. So right here, what I would do is I would come to something like these 3 columns right here, and I'd go, okay, I want to learn how to make these, and maybe I'd mess with them in different ways, but just real quickly is I'd find something I liked on a website, and I would try to make it. So the first thing we're going to do is start out with our boilerplate, and we're going to create a div, and then we are going to do some styling. So this is going to add in some CSS, and this will be very basic. We're going to do a height of 100 pixels. Then we're going to do a width of 100 pixels, and that's going to give us a box. And then we're going to do a background color of blue. And then I'm actually going to go ahead and copy this because we're going to need to do this 3 times. So we'll paste, and then we'll just change this blue. Actually, we can just cover that up, and we'll go red, and then we'll do a green right here. So we'll save that, and if we come over to our page and refresh, we have these 3 squares. So now what we want to do is just try to get them in a line. So one of the things you should practice doing is like move this blue one over 100 pixels, move this green one up 100 pixels, and then put the red one over here next to it, and just get used to moving these blocks around because you're going to need to be able to do this in the future. So what we could do with this green one right here is we could just move it over. So we can come back up to our CSS, and we can just add to it, and we can just say that we want to add in a margin. So we can just say we want a margin to the bottom of the green one, and we'll say 100 pixels. And then if we come over here and we refresh this, we can see that we have moved this red one down because it added a margin. So we need to actually add a margin to the left, and then let's see if we can get this box to move up. So instead of a margin bottom, what we ended up needing was a margin top, and we need to add a margin to the left, and we'll also add that 100 pixels. So we'll go ahead and save that, move this over a little bit so we can see it. So we'll save this, move this over, and again, now I moved it the wrong way. So we moved it over, but then we need to move it. What I think we could do is just add in a minus right here. Now we have negative 100 pixels, refresh, and we have now effectively moved the green one right here. So now we want to move this red one over here and get all three of them in a line. So we could actually just copy this right here, paste it, and we need to move to the left 200 pixels because our blocks are 100 pixels, and we could just make this minus 200 and refresh, and wow, our red block is now off the screen. So we need to keep this actually at 100 pixels. So if we refresh this, there's a red block, and you can see this is really how I basically learned CSS. Was I would come in here and I would just visit a page like this right here, and then I would Google how to do certain things, and I often practiced with these different colored blocks right here, just moving them around. So if we wanted to get these over here like this to be in a line like this without having to mess around with all of this, there is something called the display flex, and we could just type this in one section. So in this body, because everything is in this body, normally what you do is you type in a section. I was going to do this in the body, but I'll just show you the right way to do this. We'll put this in a section right here that needs to be deleted, and we could style this, and you would say display flex. And then if we now come over here and refresh this page, and they have not moved, they should have moved. So let's actually try and justify. Oh, they did. The reason they didn't move is because the display flex puts them in a line. So if we actually delete this, I did that too early. So they didn't move because they weren't supposed to. So if we refresh this, they're going to be over here. If we want them in a line, we can go it's back to where we had. So style, display, flex. I was confused because I was thinking that they should have moved, but that's just how they were supposed to be. So if we wanted to now move them over, I think to the center, we can go justify content center. And if we save this, we refresh, and there it's in the center. So effectively how I learned was I wanted to create something like this, and I would go to Google and be like, how do I get 3 divs in a row? Or I need 2 divs in a column, and then 2 more divs next to those in a column, and 2 divs next to those in a column. So you'd have about me, goals, another about me and goals, and another one over here, and another one over here. Basically, I just Googled how to do stuff, and that's going to be what you need to do. But I want to actually walk you through this section on CSS just so you can get an idea of how much stuff there is. And you are going to feel overwhelmed, but that is okay. CSS is not that hard. You just basically know what you need to do and that you can do it, and then Google and read about how to do it. And you will get used to seeing all of this kind of stuff because you'll do it enough or you'll see it enough that it just becomes a lot easier to remember. So we got this over here in the center now. Maybe we want to space them out. You could add some padding if you wanted to each one. And you could actually do that down here by just typing in margin, which you have previously seen. And we can do margin right. And let's say we want to try 30 pixels. That might not be enough, but we can space that one out, and we could copy this and just paste it in down here, save it. I actually think we'll try 100 because 30 was just a little too close together. And if we refresh this, I guess that actually didn't move them over as much as I would have liked. That's because I did 10. So let's put a full space of 100 pixels, and boom, they're spaced out. And maybe we want them down in the center of the section like this. What we would do is come back up to the section because that's what we want to adjust is everything. And I think this is just align items, the center. And let's see, I think this is how we do that. That is not. And I actually forgot that is because you have to set the height of the section, like how big do you want it. And if I'm remembering right, to do the height of the entire page, so if your page is like this big or this big, you have to set the height to 100. I think it's VH, and I'm not sure if we could do %2. We could try that in a second. So now it will stay in the center of your web page, no matter how big or small it is, because you set that height. Let's see if we could do 100% because I actually am not sure. That might work, might not work. Refresh, it does not work. It does need to be VH. In fact, so this is how I learned CSS, was just playing around with things like this. And maybe I was like, okay, well, I want to change the color to the background of this section, and you could just go background color and we could make it like beige and you could save it. Or maybe you would want to set an image like this as your background image. And I'm going to show you how to do these things in our actual project build when we build this page right here. So let's go ahead and switch over and open up a new folder and we'll start building this page right now. So what I think we will do is just go ahead and type out all of the HTML and then we'll come back and style it in just a second. So this is what we are going for, but the HTML will look very plain when we get done typing it, but we'll go ahead and start the HTML. So we can just change our title to like my website, and then we'll come down here in between the body tags. And I haven't shown this yet, but one of the things that you're going to notice is we have these sections right here. Usually you can separate these with divs, but it is also pretty common practice to separate these with sections, which we have not seen yet. So I guess we will go ahead and use our first set of sections. So we'll make our first section, and then inside of here, we're going to make our first div. And this really is going to be pretty simple. The first thing we're going to do is import our image into our HTML. So let's go ahead and save this. I'm going to open up this page, the index.html, and I'm going to put it over here inside this tab. So there it is. We'll close out of that, pull this page back over, and we're going to import our image. And the reason I open that up is so we can see our image once it actually imports. So now we will import our logo, or the picture of you if you're making this as an actual portfolio. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an image. We're going to say the image is going to be the logo. And the alt, so if our image fails, we can put just logo, or you would put like your name or something right here instead of just logo. So we have the logo, we have the image. If we save it and we come over here and we refresh it, bam, there is our gigantic logo. So we're going to actually add our styling later. So I'm just going to leave this as it is with really big Zeus character over here. So the next thing we are going to want to do is add in our name, which is going to go underneath of it. So we see right here, we have my name is. So we're going to go ahead and add in an H1. So we have our H1, and we'll just say my name is just like I had previously in the example. And then we're going to call that good because that's all we have over here. And in the next section, we are going to have these about me, goals, and skills. So we can go ahead and type in a new section. So in the first section, we need our first of 3 divs, I believe, that we're going to end up making. And then we're going to need an H2. We're going to call this about me. We'll make that capitalized. And then we're going to have a paragraph tag, and we'll just say what I have over here. I think I have insert details about yourself here. We'll just put, yeah, I guess I'll just type that out. Insert details about yourself here, period. And I think that's going to be good for this first one. Then we're going to do my goals, which is going to be inside of a new div. And we called this my goals. I don't know if I would actually have this as my goals. Inside of this, I think we need an another H2. I forgot to put our tags around this, so we'll cut that and move it over here. And underneath of my goals, we will add another paragraph, and we'll say my goals and aspirations are to become ... So you can fill that out. And then our last div that we're going to add in here is my skills. So we can come back over here, H2, my skills. We'll put the Z because we're awesome. And we will add in our last paragraph. We can type in my technical skills are off the charts. period. And now I think that's good. So let's make sure we save this, refresh this page, and you're going to see there's my name, which is going to be in this section up here. And then you can see this looks very different than this over here. You can definitely tell the styling is going to make a big difference. So we have all of that showing up. We're going to need our last section. And inside of this section, we're going to need one more div, and we're going to make an H2. And I think we have a contact me. So we have so in the H2 we have contact me, and then we have a paragraph tag, and it is interested in working together. Let's chat. And then we have another paragraph tag, and we have our email. So we'll just say email your at email.com. And then we have another paragraph tag, and this is our phone number. And we'll say 12345678990. And if we come back over here, I think that looks right. Let's refresh the page. And now we have all of our content on the page. Pretty crazy that we're going to turn just this a little bit of HTML right here into this right here. So now is when the actual styling is going to start. I'm going to try to go slow so that I can explain what we're doing in the styling. So the first thing we want to do is use our background image. I think this clouds image right here is the one we're going to use for our first section. And I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to make our style inside of our actual HTML, and then we'll link it into our style sheet, or we'll create a style sheet and link it later, and I'll show you how to do that. But for now, we're just going to do all of our styling right here on this page. So the first thing you have to do is create the style, or the CSS, which is going to go inside of these style tags. And the only other time you wouldn't need to have style tags is if you create a separate file, and we'll call it style.css, and you're going to see our little logo here changes to represent that this is CSS. Then you wouldn't need these style tags. You could just type in your CSS into this file directly, which I will show you here at the end of this section. So the first thing I think we'll do is actually just make a ID for this right here, or a class. So we'll make a class which is going to define what class we're using here. So what we could use up here for our, I guess, class is what we would call it. We'll just use header like this, and then we open up curly braces, and whenever you do any kind of styling, you will need to use curly braces even if you're in the style sheet over here. So this will be our header class, and we are going to put in our image right here. So we will say we want our background image, and the great thing about CSS is everything is pretty much named exactly how you would like it. So a background image inside of this specific section. So this section is going to have whatever background image is inside of the class header, which we can add in right here. So now if we put in a background image right here, we are going to see that inside of that first section. So our background image is going to be, we'll say URL, and inside of this is going to be single quotes, and it's clouds.jpg. And I think if we save that, that should work for us, and we refresh, and now we have our clouds behind our gigantic Zeus logo here. And let's go ahead and fix our image right here, and we'll give this guy a name. So we'll say we're going to give this a class. We're going to make another class right here so that we can actually format this guy so he's not quite so gigantic. And we'll just call this our profile image. And so what we'll do is come back up here, and we need to add another class. So we'll say profile, need our dot at the front, profile dash image. And you will need to use this dot for anything that you want to make a name for. But let's say we wanted to make a style for just an H1. We actually would not need to put that little dot in front of it. And this will automatically style all of the H1s. If there's already an element, you can just name the element and you don't have to put that dot in front of it. So if we were to change something for the body, and we wanted to change everything inside of the body tags, we would be able just to type in body and open this up, and we could just say our background color of red. And if we save that, everything inside the body tag, which is everything we have in our HTML, if we refresh this over here, is going to change to red. So that is just what you see when you see these dots. That kind of means it's a custom name that you have made up. So our profile image obviously is not a tag. It is something that we have added in. So let's go ahead and we're going to give this guy some styling. So let's display, and we want to display in a block, and we want there to be no margin. So we'll give it the margin of 0 and auto, and if I remember right, this is left and right, and this is up and down, and this is left and right. And then we want to give it a width of how big do we want it. Let's just say 500 pixels. We'll give that a try, and we can say, let's just try this and see what this looks like. So refresh, and there he is. He is now much smaller, and he is in the center. And we will go ahead and get rid of this here in just a second. We'll probably move this name over, and we'll try to get rid of this little outline right here. So the first thing we want to do is add our background size. See if we can get rid of this little line right here. Oh, that actually is going to make it so we can do our parallax. Let's align our text. So we can do text align the center, and that should move this text over to the center, and it does. We'll give it a little bit of padding, and we'll say padding. We want to do 20 pixels, and then we want to do 0, and that should move it up a little, and it did give a little padding down there to the bottom. I think what we'll do is we'll also do the parallax. So for the parallax, which is when you scroll, the image doesn't move, but this little line moves, and it makes it so the image looks stationary. For the parallax, what we can do is the background, I think it's attachment down here, and we'll do fixed. And if we save that, refresh this page, but we can't actually scroll yet, so we're not actually going to be able to see that. And let's go ahead and see if we can create a body tag. So we'll do our body, and I think we'll change our font, and maybe we'll change our font color just right here. So I think the font color is just color, and we'll just use white as our color. And if we refresh this, it gives us our color change right here. And inside of the body, we'll do a margin of 0, and we'll do a padding of 0, and then we can change our font if we want to change our font. So you can change your font with font family, and we'll just do this right here. This looks good. And we'll save this, and we'll refresh it, and there we have gotten rid of that border that we did have, and now it goes, our image goes all the way to the edge. I think the last thing we want to do is just make our sections take up an entire page or the entire screen at a time, which is what we have right here, where you see this takes up the entire screen, and then you scroll. So what we can do for that is add in a section for the sections. So we'll just do, I think it's the minimum height is 100. Is it VH? I think. And if we refresh this page, there, that did it. That makes it full size. We're going to need to move this guy down so he's centered. But we'll do that in just a second. And with that, we can do the display flex, and that should put everything so that it will be responsive, and that puts it over here to the side, which we don't want. And we can do an align items center. Believe that will put us back in the middle. It did not. It also messed up our bottom. This is going to make these centered because we did the flex for all of the sections. So this is going to apply to every single section that we are adding this to. So we'll justify the content to the center, and then we'll text align to the center. Hopefully this gets everything moved over for us. And there he is. Now he's in the center. And also look at what happened with our three divs right here, as well as this down here is now in the center. So you can see how the CSS is starting to take shape. And then we want to scroll, snap a line, and we're just going to say start. And this is going to help with our parallax scrolling. So now we can have that working. And we'll need to add our background images for these to make sure those sections look different here in just a second. So I think our header's done. I think our profile image is done. I think our body's good. Let's see. Let's go ahead and I guess work on our divs. So we can come down to these three divs right here. We can give them a class and we'll just call them content block. And we can just highlight this so that way we don't misspell anything. And we'll put it inside of all of these divs so they have the exact same class. Now we can create the content block. So we'll give our period content dash block, open that up, and we can put in, we want it to flex the basis, and we'll see, we want it to, let's just start out with something like 20%, save, refresh, look at all this, and you can see we now have this spaced out. I think 20% looks okay. That's more spaced out than what we have. We'll leave it at 20 for now. And then let's just add, we don't really need any padding, but we will end up adding some opacity in a minute whenever we add our image. So let's go ahead and add our background image to this section. So I'm actually just going to do this inline and we'll do our background image. And I think we did the goals for this one. So we'll type in goals.jpg and I bet that it's going to tell me I need this to go URL and this will need to be inside of parentheses because there's nothing after it. Okay, so a few things we're going to end up having to adjust this image. But one of the things that I like to do with images that are really bold like this is add in some opacity. So we can just say opacity, which is actually just going to change the background to be more transparent. So if we refresh this, that didn't change our opacity. Maybe we will do less than 1. Let's do like 0.2. And our image, that actually changed the opacity for our text here instead of the image. So I think what we're going to have to do is, I think what we're going to end up having to do is add in another section. So we'll have to do another content section, and this will need a set of curly braces, and this is going to need a period. And I think we might end up having to add in the before, and you're going to see that it adds responsive style to a pseudo element. So this will actually make it so our text itself isn't affected by the opacity and it's just the image. So we're going to have to add in our image that we have down here into this content block right here. So we should be able to delete this so we can actually come back up to our background image that we have right here, and we could just do a background size. This will need a semicolon if I want this to work. So we want our background size, and we want it to be, we want it to cover, not contain. We want it to cover, so let's refresh. We didn't add in our, so what we could do is move this so that way our opacity is not on our text. We'll save that. We need to add in our content section to our actual section right here. So we can make this our class content section so that way we can actually get our background image in here, which for some reason is not displaying. So, oh, it's not displaying because this is not inside of quotes. So now if we refresh this, okay, so sorry for the hard edit. As I was making this, I decided to go ahead and split the content section and the actual section for the content because you can't do one without the other and having it actually display properly over here. So I didn't want to confuse you when everything was looking really terrible, and then all of a sudden it comes together. So I figured what I'll do is I'll just explain this. So we're going to make the position relative, which is going to make it relative to the screen. We're going to change the color of our text to black. We're going to display the flex so that a way if you like make your screen come in, it'll actually like move this around. And the reason you want to do flex is for like a mobile phone, it will flex, and so if the screen is bigger, then it will all fit on one screen. So that is the purpose of the flex, and we want them to be in a row. We want to justify the content as around it. That makes it so everything fits properly. We want to align the item center, and then we want to flex wrap, which will also help with this adjusting of the screen size, which is also just called making it responsive. And when you do a content section, you have to have this like empty string for the content, otherwise nothing is going to show up. We want to make our top, bottom, right all at 0 so that way it fits to the screen. We already added our background image, which you saw. We want it to cover so that way there's no border around it. It goes all the way around, and we want it fixed so that way our parallax, when we actually scroll on the page, will move the images in the background. They'll stay put, but reveal more and more to us as we scroll through it. And then our opacity changes the darkness of, or the transparency of the background image. So you can adjust that if you would like to. And then our content block, which is actually the content we have right here, the about me. We already adjusted all of that. So we want it flex, which is going to make it in a row. We want the padding to make it go side to side, which we actually don't need this or this really. We could delete both of those and just leave this and then save this. And if we refresh it, then you can see didn't even make a difference. But that is the content blocks that we have right there. And the last thing to do, I think, is just add our background image of the phone to this last section. So we'll actually do this in line. And so we could just say style, background color. We don't want background color, we want background image. And I think the image that we are going to use is the contact. We have to do the URL over here, and it needs to be inside of quotes, and we need our contact.jpg. If we save that, we refresh it, there is our image, but we are going to need to basically just copy all of this. Where is it? All of this right here for this content section. So what we could do is just type in, we want to add the class. I'm actually not sure this is going to work, but we're going to try it. Content section. Does that keep it? That did not adjust it. I guess we are going to have to go ahead and do this the full proper way and make a new section. So I guess what we'll do is just delete this. Sorry for that. I thought we could get away with making it real short inline style, but I was apparently wrong. So we'll just do the contact. We'll make our curly braces, and this one's going to go pretty quick. So we just want our background image right here with the URL with the single quotes, and it was contact.jpg. Save it, make sure that it stays over here. And our image disappeared, which means we have a typo. And our typo is actually that we just need to add this class down here to this bottom section. So we got to add this class, paste that in there. Now, if we refresh it, there is our image comes back to us. Now we just got to do some formatting. So we want to do the background size. We want to cover so that way there's no border around the edge. We want to make it fixed so that way it will have that parallax, which is going to be the background attachment. We want it to be fixed. We want our text color to be black, which I actually think it is already. So we'll just type in black, and we want to align our text to the center, which really it should already be centered. We don't really need to, I don't think we need to do that because we adjusted all of that inside of the body. So let's go ahead and refresh this. We have our contact right here, which scrolls up and down. And I believe that is a replica of what we have built over here. So here it is. This is like a beginner's guide to CSS, and I know that seemed like a lot, and if this was my first time watching this, I would be thinking this is way a lot, but I really wanted you to just watch this and follow along because you need to see how many different areas of CSS there really are so that you can kind of get an idea of, okay, you can do just about anything with CSS. So go out to your favorite web browser, like go out to a Facebook and try to copy some of their stuff like we did with the Wikipedia, and try to copy what they have and build like your own and just copy what's going on. And also don't forget to play around with those red, green, and blue blocks and just move them around and make different divs and sections, and make sure to play around with this. This will give you a really great start of what you can do with CSS. And I know that it seems like it's a lot and it's like going to be really hard to learn, but it really is not going to take you that long. In a few days, you'll be able to get the hang of this. So if you just watch this video or this section on CSS, maybe once or twice, you will get the hang of it pretty quickly. So the last thing I wanted to show you is we can actually take all of this CSS, we can delete these style tags, and we can put all of that over here and save it. So that way our index.html is much shorter, as you can see. And you can actually just link our CSS by typing in link and our style sheet, and it is called style.css. And if we save it, now when our page is loaded, it's going to read this head tag. It's going to see here's the reference for the style.css. It'll grab it and apply all of that CSS over here. So if we now refresh our page, you can see all of our CSS is still saved. And if we wanted to add anything to it, so let's say we want to change the content block, so the distance between these to 10%, we can save this over here. And if we refresh it, these are going to move. And you can see, actually, I think that just made it skinnier. Let's try back to 30. Yes, it does. It just makes our divs a little skinnier. So the point was, you can actually see how the CSS works over here. So if you wanted to add something else, you would do that over here in the style.css. And because we have it linked over here, it'll automatically apply the CSS to our project.